Welcome to another edition of the Mail Time podcast. I'm joined today with Hillel Fuld, an amazing voice for the Jewish people and for Israel. He made Aliyah with his family and now has a wife, 5 children, and is known for his outspokenness on behalf of the state of Israel and Israeli technology. So Hillel, thanks so much for taking the time today.
I thought I was best known for my good looks.
Maybe, and well, it's the good looks, and let's get right into one of the issues that you've really been talking about, and it's been on the front of everyone's mind. You're also known as being part of an unfortunate club in which one of your siblings, Ari, was murdered by Palestinian terrorists. First, can you share with the audience a bit about Ari and his life?
Sure. So we're 5 brothers. Ari was the one right above me in the lineup, and anyone that knew him knew he was a force to be reckoned with on multiple levels. Online, he was fighting for Israel fiercely, 24/6, basically, offline for Shabbat. And that was online. Offline, he went base to base to bring IDF soldiers, food and ice cream or whatever it was. And he volunteered for the army, climbed up the ranks in the IDF, continued to volunteer in reserve duty, got an exemption at the age that everyone gets an exemption. He ripped up the exemption, continued to volunteer. He was a beast. He was a warrior. And 6 years ago, a Palestinian kid, again, a kid, not a Hamas terrorist, just a regular, normal kid, came from behind, stabbed him in the main artery in his neck, at which point Ari was basically dead. And somehow he managed to chase down the terrorist and shoot him, and bring down the terrorist right before he was about to murder his next victim. Then Ari obviously collapsed and died. And Ari became a national hero on the state of Israel for saving this woman's life in his last breath. And the comfort was that at least this kid, this Palestinian, this terrorist, gets to spend the rest of his life in jail. But that's changed.
So actually, I'll just tell you that I was a college student a little bit before he was murdered, and I was always engaging with his content, and I was one of the people who really was introduced to certain aspects of Israeli society through Ari's content. So it was a huge reach, and he's sorely missed. His his murderer is now going to be released in the next couple of weeks. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's on the list of those being released in this deal. It's not in the first, the first one already was, so he wasn't released yet. But if the deal continues and this, they release our hostages, then yeah, he'll be getting out.
What's your feeling on the deal, aside from the fact that your brother's murderer will be released?
Yeah, I think that in the world of social media, there's no place for nuance, and everything's black and white. But that's not real life, and real life is gray. And I think this deal is a perfect example of that. I think it's both beautiful and terrible at the same time. The deal is absolutely terrible from a strategic perspective, and the thought of releasing 1,000 monsters onto the streets is just, it's just insanity. On the other hand, we have these poor hostages who, get to be reunited with their families, and the families who've suffered immense terror and torture for the past year and a half get to meet be reunited with their loved ones. So, there's nothing more beautiful than that. But, it's these two parallel lines that coexist but never meet.
Asher Gedalia was on my podcast last week, and we were discussing this. And his brother Yosef was murdered in Kfar Aza, trying to rescue innocent civilians, Doron Steinbrecher. And when I asked him about the deal, and I said, because you're part of the bereaved family group, your opinion carries more weight. And he was actually pushing back on the idea, saying that it shouldn't be that our opinion has any other, has a higher value than anyone else. So you agree with him?
100%. What's the difference if it's my terrorist or someone else's terrorist? Same story. I mean, yeah, maybe it hurts us a little more, but our opinion on the deal should not be any different than anyone else's opinion.
I think that in Israeli society, though, there is a different, I don't want to say appreciation, but there's a different set of rules, though. Would you agree on that in terms of what can and can't be said when it comes to bereaved families and what is within the acceptable line? So, for example, you'll have people on both sides saying, and I think it's borne out in the fact that a lot of those voices are on television talking about the deal, saying, okay, it's my brother or it's my sister or my friend fell in the army or my brother, and it carries a different weight, though. So it is in practicality not exactly the same in Israel, right? For those who don't live in Israel, there is a difference, no?
I mean, from a media perspective, maybe. But I don't, we got together, the Fuld family got together a couple of nights ago for burgers to just discuss, talk it out. And, Miriam, Ari's wife, said, like, yeah, of course, it sucks that he's getting out, but like these hostages, we need to bring them home. And I don't think that maybe it's more impressive that she's able to say that and disconnect from the fact that it's Ari's murderer being released. But I don't think our opinion should matter more as far as whether the deal is a good deal or not a good deal. Meaning, emotion shouldn't be part of a political decision of this stature. I think emotions need to be left out. So I don't think that my opinion matters more than anyone else's.
And I'm going to ask you now, as a father of a soldier who's been fighting courageously on behalf of the IDF. I can use his name, correct? I think you've posted it on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah.
So Tzvi has been in Kivati, and as a father of someone who's been fighting, does this deal have an effect on how you see what your son's being asked to do for the state of Israel?
So it's interesting. First of all, on a very personal level, of course, I'm happy, that he doesn't have to go into Gaza right now and, fight in the depths of hell over there. So that's a very short term kind of, I guess, totally personal level. But my other son, who, has been set on being an elite soldier in the IDF, is now like saying to himself, like, you know, why would I want to draft to an army that releases these terrorists and all these soldiers who lost their lives in this war for what? For us to release Ari's terrorists? So for him, it's very frustrating, and rightfully so. I get it. But listen, again, it's a very nuanced thing. There's no black and white answer here. It's complicated.
How's Tzvi's experience been so far? Have you been able to get some of the feeling on the ground from his group?
Yeah, he's excelling. He's doing great. Every soldier has their own kind of like what they call pakal, which is like, some have a negev, some have a different type of gun, some have, some are snipers, whatever it is. So he has the negev, which is this massive, machine gun that they usually give to like the beast, like the big guy. So he has that, and yeah, he's doing great.
I remember when he was drafting and going through training and following your social media posts. So after October 7th, we founded Unit 11741. We've helped with over $25 million of equipment for soldiers, oftentimes in some coordination with the foundation that was set up in your brother's memory. And you'd posted about needing equipment, and that's actually one of the things that the Ari Fuld Foundation sets out to do. My question for you is, we've almost accepted as a norm that there's going to be some level of donations for soldiers and that they're going to need assistance. Most of your social media posts are showing a great side of Israeli society. And as someone who's been trying to help soldiers, it's been a little bit frustrating to see the other side, which is that some of the soldiers on the front lines are missing equipment. As a father, and as someone who pays taxes, and as someone who really cares about the future of the state of Israel, how do we, deal on one hand with the fact of the matter that soldiers need donations, and on the other hand, trying to present strength and unity on behalf of the IDF?
So I don't know what your experience has been, but my experience has been that, in the beginning, obviously after October 7th, we were caught by surprise. So definitely there was a shortage of, basic equipment. But my experience since then hasn't been like, it's not like they don't have a pair of boots. They just, could have better equipment. Like you could have better, glasses, protective glasses, better vests, better. It's not that they don't have equipment. They have it. They could just have better ones. And the more expensive ones, just, are not supplied by the IDF. But again, this has been my experience is not that they're, going into Gaza without any equipment. And again, I also don't see a contradiction there, to be honest with you. Like I don't think that our message is we're Mr. Macho. Like we're vulnerable. We're human beings, and these kids are kids. Like people talk about IDF soldiers, they're kids, right? And I'm not. That doesn't negate the fact that they're warriors and heroes. So I don't see those two things as kind of mutually exclusive. We need help, we need support, we need donations, and we're also unbelievable heroes and warriors.
So yeah, so I'll say, so in our experience, it might not be that they don't have a helmet or they don't have ceramic plates. It's a question of from what year are they from and are they expired or not, and that's something that we've dealt with. So specifically with Givati, and maybe we'll talk about this offline, but there's been a number of things that we've helped with greater strategic things that have, I know, contributed to the safety and security of soldiers like your son. And to me, you saw this, to an extreme in the beginning, but even now, in terms of saying, okay, if there's a crack in a helmet, is that still a valid helmet, or that's something that should be in the garbage? And that's something that we've really had out with officials behind the scenes. And obviously Tamir Yadai, who is the ground forces commander, he's since resigned, but he actually banned donations in July of 2024. He came out, and that was very controversial. And a lot of these different Magadim sending me messages saying, yeah, don't ignore everything he says. This is completely crazy. And they did ignore it. So I guess from my perspective is that I would hope that the people would take responsibility and make it so that the soldiers wouldn't have to get donations. And, having a bag that is functional and has different pockets for medics and for doctors is a big step up from a rucksack that is completely pocketless. For example, now you might say that's a premium item, but I'm hoping that we can, as the state of Israel, which can accomplish all sorts of technologically amazing things, can also take care of the simple soldier, quote unquote, who's out there fighting. And to me, it's been kind of frustrating, especially, look at drone technology. You have these amazing drones that Israel is on the forefront of coming up with the technology, and then 3 out of the 7 cameras aren't working on the border on October 7th, and some of the cameras you can't even get the parts because it's out of production. And then when you talk to, you'll have certain groups like, Yosef Gedalia, Hashem Yikam Tamo, he was the drone operator in Duvdavan, and you had certain things like that with Tzanchanim, but then you turn to other brigades and they maybe had 2 drones, maybe, or the reservists aren't given the same thing as the Sadir. And that's been a frustrating thing. And we're trying to make progress on it. And I would hope that, I guess it's not mutually exclusive. Obviously it's a schus. It's a tremendous honor to be able to help. It's just saying that we'd like to be able to get to a point where it would be able to be handled by the people that are supposed to be handling it.
I think I often say that one of the biggest miracles of the state of Israel is that the IDF, which both you and I realize is highly dysfunctional, has won any wars. Right? People talk about the IDF wars. Like, it's not just like this is like an army that, like, we know how it works.
Yeah, and it's one of these things where it comes from a place of immense love. It's not saying that, God forbid, I'm not one of these breaking the silence lunatics that's sitting there screaming. No, it's saying that these guys are the absolute most amazing people you could ever come across. The common soldiers that are out there sacrificing everything. If you're a young kid, you're enthusiastic, you're going out there. And if, there's a lot of people that are over 40, even over 50. We've even helped people that are over 60, and they're leaving their kids, grandkids, everything, hundreds and hundreds of days, and trying to help. And from our perspective, we're just saying, yeah, we just got to give them the best chance of being able to come back home in one piece. And that's the message that we've been pushing and trying to push. And I guess, some of the, I'm always honest. It's hard for me sometimes to see it not talked about, especially like in the first 5-6 months. It was talked about a little bit, but I don't think it got the media coverage and publicity it should have, to the extent, because it really, just to the fact of the matter, we've raised and given over $25 million, and there's other organizations that have raised tens of millions of dollars as well. It shows how great the need was. And it's just,
I don't know that I agree with that. I don't know that I want to hang our dirty laundry out to the world to tell Hamas, hey, we're weak, we're vulnerable. I don't know that that's a smart strategy. I understand what you're saying from a media perspective. In order to raise funds, that's important, but I don't know that doing this publicly for the world to see is a good idea necessarily. But
so I guess let's go with this. So what do you think the purpose of social media is when it comes to Israel? Because there is a little bit of attention, and when we say dirty laundry, I would say we've tried, and people try all of the time to try to deal with it quietly. And then based on some of the bureaucratic challenges and some of the chaos that's going on, which could be, it's, in many cases, it's understandable. There's a million things going on. You just had 300,000 reservists. How are you supposed to deal with everything going on? This is your systems aren't built to handle and tolerate something like that. But Israel, social media, when it comes to Israel, how do you deal with actually getting the message out so people know and want to help? Because there's people that want to help, versus saying that we don't want to hang any dirty laundry and we're trying to promote unity and achdus.
I don't use that's not what I use social media for. I use social media for defending Israel and countering the lies and propaganda that's being told in the blood libels that are being told about Israel. I'm not saying, listen, it's also a question of how you frame it, right? Like when I was raising some money for Tzvi's unit, I didn't frame it like, oh my God, the army's dysfunctional. They have nothing. Help him. He's going to die. I framed it like, he's got, his gear, but let's get him some better tactical gear. And, it could really save lives. Like it's not, it's a question of perspective. Is it like they need it and like they're going to, be screwed if they don't get it? Or is it like extra credit? Like you can help support them and give them better equipment. The first one to me is detrimental. I think it's just a bad message. The second one is a message that facilitates and helps people kind of feel like they're part of it and donate money, et cetera, et cetera. That's fine. The first one I have a little bit of a problem with. It's all.
Yeah, so we'll friend in a friendly manner disagree. I think that some of it is kind of the extra credit stuff. I think if someone's saying we desperately need a barbecue or we desperately need a slightly warmer coat versus having a standard army issue coat, I would agree. But if someone doesn't have or wasn't issued a helmet or vests or adequate night vision or something like that, to me, it's a problem. But I do agree with you that in an ideal case, we wouldn't necessarily talk about that.
I mean, listen, if that's the case, that a person's missing some basic equipment, then there are ways to go about it without, making Israel look dysfunctional. You could reach, back channels. You could reach out to people privately. It doesn't have to be, announcing to the world that we're missing basic equipment. I just think that that's detrimental.
Now, I want to go to obviously your focus on tech. There's a thing going on with Elon Musk, people trying to accuse him of making some sort of Nazi salute. Is Elon Musk an anti-Semite?
Oh, it's so ridiculous. Like for real. I mean, before October 7th, he held a space on X with like a lot of Jewish leaders. Natan Sharansky was there, and several ministers were there, and just Jewish leaders from around the world, rabbis and Jewish leaders, whatever it is. And they talked about anti-Semitism, and he could not have been any clearer. I mean, the guy does not have an anti-Semitic bone in his body. I mean, he went to Auschwitz. Like it's a ridiculous made up lie that the left likes to make up about him because they don't know what to do with him. And again, like the guy's super duper awkward. The guy's a stoner. Like he's not, I have a lot to say about him, but he's not a Nazi and he's not an anti-Semite. And anybody who watches that clip in context, like, yeah, because these guys, you know how the media works. They cut out a small part and then it looks like a Nazi salute. But if you take it in context, he literally says, as he's doing that salute, my heart, and he holds his heart, puts his hand on his heart. He says, my hearts go out to you. Like,
and he's awkward. He was kind of bumbling around stage the entire time. It wasn't as if that was the only time that he kind of looked strange. He looked strange the entire time. Okay, I want to go to something else here. Elal, you are very proud of the ad, and here's a take I think represents some of the people from the diaspora have been trying to help. Elal is a private company that, thank God, is making money and doing a good job making money. It's been kind of frustrating trying to get equipment to soldiers because we were paying $50 a bag, then they're trying to up it to more, and the people have accused it of price gouging. And I know there was some agreement that was reached with Nir Barkat in which some of the prices of the flights are held and are sorry stabilized. But there's a frustration that they're making money on the war, and that's fine because they're a for-profit company. But don't tell me that this is Israel and this is somehow representing Zionism in a touchy-feely way, which is what the ad did a good job of doing. And that was my frustration when I read the ad. I was very, very livid. But what was your thought process on the ad, and where do you see Elal as representing for Jews and for Israel?
So, disclaimer: I've worked with Hillel many times over the years on many different projects, and I also, used to have major problems with them in terms of just their service, and it was just subpar. It was, inferior to most other airlines, and they're by no means perfect. And I'm there are many complaints. I have complaints. That's fine, but to expect a private company who has limited supply, aka limited jets, and endless demand, and every other airline shut it down. And they're the only airline that stays supportive of Israel because they're an Israeli company, and they continue to fly despite all the challenges. And they don't have more jets; they just have a limited supply of jets and endless demand. What are they going to do? That's just the way the capitalism works. Like there's supply and demand. If there's endless demand and limited supply, price goes up. So they could take one for the team and like say, okay, we're going to lose money. Like that's just not how.
Well, it wouldn't say that they're losing money. It would say that they're holding a price to not make as exorbitant a profit.
you could say that they should be, as we call lifnei mishur sadin. They should go above and beyond. Okay, that's fine. You could say that, but you can't expect that or demand that. They're a private company. Like you can't. Again, would it be a nice thing? Of course, it would be a nice thing. Would it be fantastic if every single person had a complaint about El Al, the CEO, would pick up the phone and call him and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, okay, it would." And I could say 50,000 other things that every private company could and should do to make its customers happy. But we know the reality. The reality is that there are very few, private companies out there who take customer service and other things, with the seriousness that I think it deserves. But, again, one can say, El Al, you should be better. I get that. But to be angry at El Al for running an ad to give, reserve duty soldiers 3 points to fly around the world, which they didn't have to do. To me, it's just like, it's very, I'm sorry for saying it like this, but like, it's very Jewish. Like, dude, they're doing something nice. Like, why do we have to find a negative in it? Okay, are they angels? Are they perfect? No, of course not. They're, they make mistakes. They're a private company and they could do more. But to take an ad like that, and okay, you want to say it's a marketing, call it whatever you want. The fact of the matter is, thousands and thousands of reserve soldiers got endless points to fly around the world and a benefit that they didn't have to give them. So like, let's just say thank you. Like, why do we have to be so Jewish and be like, oh, but you did this wrong, and oh my God, you could be better here. Enough. Like it reminds me of that joke. Like a mother-in-law buys her son-in-law 2 ties. And she comes over for dinner and he puts on the tie and he's so proud. And she walks in the door and she's like, "What? You didn't like the other tie?" It's like we always find things to complain about. Like it's a nice
Okay,
thing. That's
so
it. It's a nice thing.
all right, I'll give you an authentic, I think, real response to that without being just a whiner. My point is there are soldiers that the cost was prohibitively high for their family to visit them while they're in combat. And if they'd been given a better, a price that's reasonable for people to be able to go and visit Israel, they would have been able to do so. And same thing with donations for equipment that was helping keep soldiers alive, especially the first few, let's call it specifically the first year of the war, let's say. And then now, there's different arrangements, but my point is that if you're trying to be nice, there's ways to be nice. And I'm not saying that it's not a nice thing to give points to soldiers. I'm saying that on one hand, they're a capitalist private company. So go be a private company but don't try to claim to be a company of like chesed and loving kindness.
What are you talking about? It's a marketing campaign. I understand. Are you going to go to McDonald's and say you guys want to make the
No, I
world a
won't
better
go to
place?
McDonald's. I don't go to McDonald's. Yeah.
Okay, go to,
Yeah.
go to whatever, okay, and you go to a restaurant or go to any business and say, you guys should really there are homeless people in the world. There's poverty. Why don't you go give free food to? What do you mean? I'm a cat. Like what? Like where do you draw the line? I mean, they're a private company, and it happens to be that they are an Israeli company and a Zionist company who, for example, when those hostages were freed, they announced, from the center to all El Al planes. It's a beautiful thing. When I land on El Al, I get all choked up and emotional because at the end of the day, this is my, my country, my airline, and they say, "Welcome to our beautiful country." They are an Israeli company, so it is. I do hear what you're saying that there's a balance that needs to be struck here between, the quote unquote Zionist company and a private, capitalistic company. So they have to balance those things. But to expect a private company to lower prices so that soldiers' families can come visit them would be really, really nice. I don't disagree with you. Of course, that would be really nice. But you also can't say to a company, you have to do that. Just like you can't say to McDonald's, go give out
No,
food
of
to
course.
homeless people. Like that's their business.
I'll say this. I got to know a lot of the employees going back and forth to Israel as many times as we did for try to help soldiers. And there were a few times where actually the flight attendants, we were talking, their kids are actually in war. And when they got to the hotel, we had equipment and we would then run down and meet them. So it's a very nice way to develop a relationship and see and get to meet some of, the family aspect of it. And yeah, it's amazing to see that part. And again, I'm not railing. I'm trying to get your opinion to see the unity that happened, certainly after October 7th and these crazy stories of people sitting in the cockpit and it really is incredible. I'll tell you, when I was on the flight home, I texted one of the pilots who's also a reservist, and I said, "Oh, you don't happen to be on this flight?" I didn't know what his deal was. And about midway through the flight, someone came over to me and said, "Oh, we heard that you know our colleague, so come and say hi to the team. Let's talk." And I was being able to schmooze with the pilots, and it was fun, and I appreciate that aspect of it. And again, it was just I'm more curious on your take on that, and like you said, social media doesn't always have nuance. So it's hard to have a nuanced discussion about legitimate feedback on
Well,
a
I mean,
Facebook
to
chat
be
when people go
clear,
crazy.
I just want to be very clear. Like the CEO, the new owner is a big mensch, and don't think for a second that he's rejoicing and counting the money and going to I don't know what. Like he understands the pain of his people. I know this for sure. Okay, like he can, but he can only do as much as he can do. He it's not like he could decide tomorrow. Okay, fine. I'm just exaggerating for a reason. I'm giving out 3,000 free flights to reservist families. Okay, like maybe if it was his own money and he whatever it's a company and there's a board and there's committees and there's these are decisions that need to be taken by a company, and no company in their right mind would, as hard as it is for them, and I'm sure it is hard for them, no company in their right mind would come to their shareholders and say, I'm sorry, we made less money this quarter, and I know that you're invested in my company. I'm sorry, but we needed to give free things because we care about our soldiers. Like it just doesn't work that way. It's a private company. They need to do what they need to do. They owe their shareholders money. That's it.
I appreciate your defense there, and it sounds crazy to say that it's necessary, but I do think that there's when you look at whether that's the Dan's Deals chat boards or whatever it might be, and you're going to say there are people that make those kinds of arguments, and I think it's useful to actually hear an
Oh, I agree. I
articulation of.
definitely hear it. I hear it all the time. I mean, on my posts about this LL campaign, I got tons of hate. I get it. I understand the frustration. It's legitimate. It's justified, but it's also very different when the context is, LL, you're an Israeli company. We're in this existential war. Can you please help us more than you're helping us? And LL sucks because they don't give out free tickets to reservist families. Like, it's a very big difference if you're like expecting and demanding it, or if you appreciate it and you would expect, express that appreciation to a private company. Maybe you guys can do more and go above and beyond, but you can't demand it. And it's not, doesn't make them a bad company if they're not doing it, I think.
Something we don't really talk about on this podcast so much, but now that we have you here, it's not easy fighting a war with this many soldiers, specifically reservists, in combat and therefore largely not working. What's the status of Israeli tech and where's the economy holding in the aftermath? We're now 475 days past October
So
7th.
this past week's Torah portion, there's a very mysterious and strange verse in the Torah that I'm sure you've read 1,000 times. I don't know if you've thought about it, but throughout this war, I've thought about it a lot. And that is that the story is that the Israelites, before we were called Jews, were enslaved in Egypt, ancient Egypt, and they were persecuted and they were tortured, and the Torah says, and to be clear, the Torah, meaning not the commentary on the Torah, the actual Torah, black on white, the Bible, the Old Testament, says the words, I'll say it in Hebrew and then translate, the more the Egyptians persecuted the Jews, the more they tortured the Jews, the Israelites, the more the Israelites reproduced and thrived and flourished. Now, if you think about that, that's counterintuitive. That makes no sense. What do you mean? They're persecuting and torturing us and we're growing and flourishing? That doesn't make any sense. It should be the other way around, right? They're torturing us, and so I think that the reason that is one of my favorite verses in the Torah is because that is our entire story. That is our story. And it's supernatural and it's unbelievable, but in every generation they come after us, they end up, going extinct into the depths of history books, and we flourish and thrive and grow. And that's the case today as well. It makes no sense whatsoever, but numbers don't lie. And Israel in 2024 broke all records of M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and a new peak in investments as well. Like we're breaking records, despite half the country being in reserve duty, and like we had every excuse in the world to just come crashing down and the economy come, but that's not what happened. And the more they torture us, the more they terrorize us, the more we innovate, and that's just not a slogan or an empty phrase. It's literally a fact backed up with data.
And I'll say this, by nature of the work that we were doing here, our number got around. We had a lot of people reaching out, a lot of different soldiers. And the innovation that was coming from the battlefield that people were trying to get funded to work in real time was unbelievable. I mean, it was nonstop and it was really creative and outside the box. And there are people that are fighting. And then when they have a reprieve from fighting, they're coming up with these crazy ideas. Obviously, they're not companies yet, but it's really cool to see how the Israeli mind works. And it's really special. Can you give us two companies you're particularly excited about now? It's January 22nd, 2025.
Sure. There's a company in Jerusalem founded by some scientists who are like heads of faculty in the Hebrew University. who have developed saliva-based diagnostics. So they started with pregnancy tests. Instead of peeing on a stick, basically, you put it in your mouth, and that's it. Your pregnancy test. That's commercial. It's being sold and it's on pharmacy shelves, etc. They also do it for strep tests, just saliva instead of sticking it down your throat, which we know is highly unpleasant. And they also have some breakthroughs in the cancer world, which, it's very early for clinical trials, but just imagine that, a company can detect early, detection of cancer saliva. That's the holy grail, basically. So crazy cool company. The name is company Celagnostics. They've raised some capital. They have revenue. They have an amazing team. They're raising more capital now. I met them recently, blown away by them. So that's just one company that comes to mind. I mean, it happens to be that just coincidentally, I don't know, a lot of biotech companies have come my way over the past couple of years. That's one of them. But I mean, there are thousands of companies, literally tens of thousands of companies in Israel that are just like mind blowing. And the funny thing is that some of these companies that millions of people around the world use, they don't even know are Israeli. I mean, we were talking about Riverside before. That's just one example. Riverside's an Israeli company that, is used by the biggest brands in the world for podcasting. But beyond that, and people know Waze is Israeli. Wix, which basically is off the internet, building websites on Wix is massive. Super Bowl ad, everything, right? They're Israeli. Fiverr, the marketplace for like digital services, Israeli. So a lot of these companies are massive, like Lightrix, one of the most popular iPhone apps in the world is an app called Facetune, which is whatever, it's AI-based photo editing, but, massive. Like Kardashians use it, like millions and millions and millions of users. Developed in Yerushalayim. It's crazy stuff. And like we talk about autonomous cars, right? Like we all know that in a couple of years, our cars won't have steering wheels, but not many people ask themselves how that's actually going to work. Like how is a car going to drive itself? And the answer is there are three ways. There's cameras, which is what Mobileye does, an Israeli company. Then there's radar, which is great, except that it's limited in range and it's blocked when there's, I don't know, fog or other things. And there's something called LiDAR. LiDAR is what you see when you see these autonomous cars driving around with this massive thing on their roof. That's LiDAR. Now, obviously, we're not going to have those massive things on our roof. So how are we going to be autonomous? The answer is there's an Israeli company that has developed LiDAR that's tiny, basically. And they've signed a deal with BMW. So like the BMW 7 Series, is using their LiDAR. So really, if you think about it, when cars go fully autonomous, other than Tesla that's developing its own autonomous technology, Israeli companies are going to lead the way. And so on the one hand, it's like, how did this country that's so small, like smaller than New Jersey and, the most unstable region on planet Earth, come up with a company like Mobileye and Innoviz, which is the LiDAR company, or, all these other companies that are just leading the world. And it's just wild to see. So on the one hand, surprising. On the other hand, I've been around long enough to say like what we're doing in the tech world is just supernatural and borderline miraculous. I think it's biblical, personally.
Be careful there, because now someone's going to say Tesla is creating their own autonomous vehicle because Elon Musk is an anti-Semite. So that's why he's that's how the internet works. That's how Candace Owens is going to go.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on her. My God.
I will say that the day that hire was announced at the Daily Wire, I did send messages on the back channel saying that she's nuts. So I don't want to be a prophet on that, but I did try to say that. All right. So just for the listeners, I want to ask you for predictions. Obviously, you're not wed to these, but just to get a pulse of where people are thinking. In the next 6 months, do you think all of the hostages are out of Gaza?
Some of them, unfortunately, not alive, but I hope so. Yes, I do think so. I don't think Israel will stand for our hostages being there for another 6 months, but maybe I'm optimistic. I don't know. Either way, I don't think they're all alive, but I do hope that they're all back in Israel, even for burial within 6 months.
Okay. And are there Israeli troops on foreign soil in 6 months?
What do you mean? What do you mean when you say foreign soil?
Lebanon, what was Syria, Gaza.
Well, I don't call Gaza. That's what I'm asking. I don't call Gaza foreign soil. I mean, Gaza's part of Israel. Whether or not the political leadership wants to understand that, and
Okay, one sec. I'm not going to let you out of that one. I agree. I'm not talking about a biblical answer. I'm talking about a modern state of Israel in terms of where Israel as a country and the political establishment established a border. I'm not saying whether or not
forget biblical. We gave back Gaza in 2005. We should not have done that. We should have remained in Gaza.
Right. So what I'm saying is, on a political on the politically established Gaza, will troops still be on the ground for the next 6 months, year? Where do you see that playing out?
And if you ask me, we'd be annexing Gaza. We'd be there. We'd be settling Gaza, or what they call occupying. I don't call it occupying. I think we'll be there. Do I think? Listen, you're asking me what I want, what I think,
What you think will happen, not what you want. I think.
Okay.
Okay, based on your answer, I know where you're holding on it. But I'm saying, what do you think is going to happen?
Right. I don't think we're going to have open, openly. I don't think we're going to have soldiers on foreign soil, but there's definitely going to be, Mossad and other, secret operations going on in Lebanon and in Syria and other things. But openly, I don't believe that in 6 months from now we're going to have, an outright war with any of these, any of these countries.
I hope you're right. I don't necessarily share your optimism, but I do hope you're correct on that. And actually, before we close here, I wanted to ask your take on the 60 Minutes clip because there's been some discussion about it, whether the Mossad's trying to cover for someone that they're trying to hide and therefore take credit for it, whether there's some sort of political angle on it. What was your take when you saw that?
First, I didn't watch it. I just watched clips on social media.
Oh, you really got to watch it. It's an awesome clip.
No, I don't. It makes me sick. Stuff makes me nauseous. I can't. I try to stay away from the poison as much as I can. Obviously, I can't stay away from.
No. Wait a second. Not the 60 Minutes clip accusing Israel of stuff in Gaza. I'm talking the Mossad, the beepers.
Yeah. Of course, I watched that. Yeah. No,
Yes, yeah. And I'm not. Oh, wait a sec. First of all, I almost vomited when I watched the 60 Minutes clip that you were just referencing because a lot of these people were involved with hostage families and giving them advice in the beginning, saying the craziest things, which we could discuss offline. But it's unbelievable to me that these kinds of thinkers and people that are fundraising for CARE were the ones that were in charge, are influencing at all Israeli policy or American policy. Very scary to me. So I agree with you on that one. Complete propaganda and nonsense. I'm talking about the Mossad pager beeper story, which obviously went viral and was a hit in the Jewish world. There's been questions about whether that was obviously it's planted and the Mossad doesn't go along with it for free, for no reason. The question is, what was your thought on why they went along with it? And was there some sort of angle there?
I mean, I think that, like I said before, that the fact that the IDF won any wars is a miracle. I think the fact that there's any single Israeli in this country that kept a secret for 10 years is just miraculous. Like this, this thing was being planned for literally a decade, if not more. I think it's unbelievable. I don't really necessarily understand your question. What does that mean, Mossad?
No, my question. Okay, so my question is that one of these things, and whether or not you love or hate Ronen Bergman, his book, a very fascinating book about Rise and Kill First, and he was saying that the Mossad and Israel are very quick to take credit for certain things, even if it might not necessarily been their work, because it helps with deterrence and helps create an image which is very, very strong. So specifically when it came to the commander for Iran, for Hezbollah, and they were saying that, oh, the Mossad agents found him, but the story was actually I can't remember his name right now, but there was an older gentleman who was with the CIA, and he was in a dumpster in Saudi Arabia and found him. And again, but what I'm saying is there's a strategic aspect to it. So I'm saying, do you believe what they're saying at face value in terms of all this, or do you think there's some story that we're never going to hear about?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to hear much about it. I think it's one of the most secretive missions in Israel's history. But again, I don't know. Just for full disclaimer, I don't know anything. I don't have any intel on this, but there's no way the Mossad wasn't involved in that. It's just not. There's no way.
No, of course. The question is there was a story originally about some guy disappearing in Cambridge or something. Some guy from Hungary. I don't know. In 50 years, it'll be fun to see what actually transpired in full. I think that's one of those unbelievable stories that we'll hear about. But Hillel, I really appreciate your time, and I hope that we can connect again soon.
Amen. Thanks for having me, my friend.
Thanks.
Take care.